The last words I said to my son were, "You'll be safe here." They made sure I never forgot that. I can still hear the wind that evening, brushing across the thin shelter walls of our colony on Vega 9, the air so clean it almost hurt to breathe. My son Cale was 7. He wore a pair of scruffed-up Explorer boots 3 sizes too big and was convinced they made him run faster. That night, he was chasing after one of the colony dogs, laughing so loudly I had to close my mission tablet just to hear myself think. We were supposed to be safe. We were light years from any conflict zone. The war was over. I had earned this silence. I sat by the fire pit, the smell of roasted root vegetables drifting up from the grill, and I remember thinking how rare it was to feel completely human again. No title. No uniform. Just Mara. Just Mom. Cale tripped over a log and bounced up like nothing happened. He waved a stick in the air, yelling something about protecting the camp from invisible aliens. I had half a mind to correct his tactics. His stance was all wrong, but I let it go. That part of me was supposed to be retired. Then came the sound I hadn't heard in years. A deep thrumming, low and mechanical, like a starship vibrating just outside the atmosphere. I stood, instantly alert. The other colonists looked up. There were no scheduled flyovers. No transports. No ships were supposed to be near Vega 9 at all. The sky split open with blue light. I screamed Cale's name as the first beam hit the western rim of the settlement. He was running toward me. Then the second beam came down. The ground beneath him tore upward, flame blooming from underneath. There was no time to reach him. Just heat, noise, and silence. When I opened my eyes, I was buried under scorched steel. My shoulder was dislocated, my leg torn open. The fire around me had died, but everything smelled like melted plastic and blood. I crawled across the ash, fingers ripping into the dirt, calling Cale's name again and again like I could will him back with the sound of my voice. I found what was left of him in a crater. A single boot. The one that never quite fit. His name still scratched into the sole with my knife. The med team found me the next day, somehow still alive, soaked in blood and fury. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared into the horizon until they asked what had happened. Empire recon drone. Labeled it a biological anomaly zone. Executed a cleanse protocol. One of the officers told me. A cleanse? I asked. Standard policy. No threat confirmed. It was called in by an outpost officer in Sector 13. They logged the colony as unregistered. We were registered. Earth had the papers signed 3 cycles ago. Guess no one told the Empire. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The name in my head wasn't Mara anymore. Not the civilian. Not the settler. The other name came back to me slowly, rising like cold iron from the pit of my gut. General Mara Laskin. Strategic Command. Former Supreme Architect of Terran Tactical Intelligence. I left her behind to become someone else. A mother. A human. But they dragged her back. When I was discharged 5 years ago, I was required to lock away everything. Files. Devices. The Omega keys. Only 3 people in the galaxy had access to the Winter Widow protocol. I was one of them. They told me Earth had no more need for war. But war had a need for me. I left the hospital without a word, ignoring the protests of the medics. I found a ship that barely worked, paid a black market pilot in barter, and flew back to the place no one talks about anymore, the Terran black site known as Arc Null. It was built beneath the crust of a dead moon and powered by a buried pulsar. And it was waiting for me. The interior hadn't aged. Security still recognized my biometric pattern. The lights flickered on one by one like ghosts waking up after a long sleep. The air smelled sterile and empty. In the command chamber sat a single device. A metal cube wrapped in carbonite shielding. I placed my hand on it. "Confirm identity," I said. "General Laskin," I replied. "Command protocol? Activate Winter Widow," the cube hissed. Lights blinked. Data screamed to life across the walls. Old allies pinged in real time. Some had gone underground. Others were thought dead. I knew better. They were just waiting for a signal that would never come, until now. I sent one message. To all surviving operators of Earth Defense Grid, the Empire has executed unauthorized strikes on a Terran colony. Civilian target confirmed. Codename Kale. Initiating reprisal under Black Sanction. This is not a war. This is a correction. Operation Winter Widow is live. They responded within hours. A stealth team in the Niro's belt. An informant inside the Empire's naval archives. Even a cybernetic assassin who owed me one last favor. Each of them said the same thing. We're in. I didn't go back for weapons. I went back for ghosts. Every map I'd drawn. Every flaw I'd found in their systems. I'd given the galaxy peace. And now I was going to give the Empire war. But I wouldn't start with fire. Not yet. No, first they would bleed in the dark. Quietly. Like the night they stole my son. I would hollow out their systems. Break their chains from the inside. By the time they realized what I was doing, I wouldn't need a fleet. Just a name. And the last one they would remember wouldn't be mine. It would be his. The Empire never saw the first blow. Not because it was hidden, but because it looked like their own hand pulling the trigger. On a border planet called Arvinis Prime, an entire communications satellite array collapsed mid-cycle, shorting out their local orbital command systems for 12 seconds. That small window was all it took. A fuel rig exploded in orbit. The media blamed solar flares. The Empire launched an investigation and found nothing but scrambled logs and confused technicians swearing they followed standard protocol. They hadn't. I had rewritten those protocols from my bunk, 10 layers beneath the crust of a long-dead moon. In another sector, a supply convoy rerouted itself through a narrow asteroid corridor. The route was labeled safe. The map showed no anomalies. That was a lie I'd planted 17 years ago as part of a hypothetical contingency. That contingency was now real. The convoy was torn apart by a natural debris storm that would have been easily avoided, had they checked the original logs I'd buried inside their own navigation system. 12 ships gone. 0 survivors. 0 alarms raised. All an accident, as far as the official report stated. These weren't attacks. Not to them. Not yet. That was the point. I wasn't going to announce my return. They didn't deserve a declaration. I was going to drag them through their own incompetence, force them to question their systems, their leaders, and eventually each other. I wasn't aiming to make noise. I was aiming to rot their machine from the inside. Still, eventually, someone noticed. Admiral Char was the kind of alien commander humans had mocked in cartoons for decades. Towering, smug, with skin like wet obsidian and eyes that pulsed purple when he spoke. He ran his fleets like theater productions. Always a camera rolling, always a quote ready for press broadcasts. He loved public displays of superiority. When questioned about the recent string of mishaps, he offered a dry chuckle and a line that would become famous for all the wrong reasons. What are they going to do? Cry us to death? He leaned back in his golden-laid chair, sipping something expensive while whole human colonies replayed his sneer across every media platform. He didn't know what I'd just sent to his private inbox. He hadn't even seen the packet opened yet. He would soon. Inside that data file were hundreds of images, time-stamped and tagged. Civilians. Children. Farmers. Medics. Each one identified as a non-combatant casualty in the Empire's own war records. Each face accompanied by footage. Deaths buried in secret archives, hidden under protocol numbers, now unsealed. One of them was Kale. When Tshar's aide saw it, he reportedly vomited. When Tshar saw it, he tried to lock down the internal network. It was too late. The file had already replicated across 50 sub-channels. By dawn, the Empire's own officers were downloading the report and whispering one name that hadn't been spoken in years. Winter Widow. Some of them laughed nervously. Others turned pale. The veterans remembered me. Remembered the black flag with the white widow mark stitched across the chest plate. Remembered that I didn't threaten. I didn't demand. I acted. And when I acted, planets changed shape. Within 3 days, 2 of Char's junior captains defected. One of them even brought a stealth cruiser with him. The other transmitted a message before vanishing into the asteroid belts. It read simply, "I've seen her work. I won't stand against it." Rumors spread like infection. Was she back? Was it her? Who was the boy? They were about to find out. I knew I couldn't rely on whispers forever. War needed more than ghosts. It needed precision. It needed movement. And it needed symbols. So I put the armor back on. Not the regulation issue. Not the new generation composite garbage. My old suit. Reinforced titanium. Cracked from a railgun strike I took defending the Archon loop. I didn't buff out the damage. I wanted them to see it. I wanted them to remember what I'd survived. Across the stars, an old dropship touched down on Deneth Prime. I walked out, flanked by 2 operators I had once trained from childhood. One was half machine now. The other had forgotten what peace felt like. We all had. That planet held one of the Empire's largest war vaults, high orbit defense, artillery prototypes, and orbital suppression arrays. We didn't destroy it. We disabled it. Quietly. Elegantly. First, we shut down internal power using a virus I'd written years ago disguised as a targeting patch. Then we reprogrammed their drone perimeter to skin each other as enemies. In less than 10 minutes, the entire outer ring of Denetha's military nerve center had turned into a silent graveyard of drones shooting at shadows. By the time we walked into the control room, most of the personnel had locked themselves in panic rooms, convinced they were under siege from within. We left them there. That was the point. This wasn't about killing. Not yet. This was about shaking the walls, reminding them that the Empire was not unbreakable. It was hollow. Overbuilt. Arrogant. And I had once designed the simulations that predicted exactly how it would collapse if someone knew where to press. After we extracted, I left a marker behind. A white widow mark etched into the floor of the Central Command Station. The symbol wasn't even sharp. Just the outline. A reminder. The rumors turned into certainty. The Empire began broadcasting advisories. Hostile rogue general operating across key sectors. Designation Winter Widow. Do not engage. Report sightings immediately. They didn't understand. They still thought they were dealing with a soldier. A rogue warrior. A lone assassin. They didn't realize I was a mother. And I had nothing left to lose. They had taken the only thing that softened me. They thought Kale was collateral. That he would be forgotten, buried under debris like a footnote. But Kale was the switch. The last thread between who I used to be and what I was now becoming. They called me Ruthless before. They hadn't seen me truly unchained. The next target would not be a satellite. It would not be a weapons depot. It would be a system. One of their nerve centers. One of the places they think is untouchable. A place where they sign orders and don't read the names on them. Because Kale had a name. And now I would carve it into their legacy. One strike at a time. The Galactic Empire had many capitals, but only one nerve. The system core on Telvaris wasn't where laws were written. It was where they were silently approved, reshaped, and buried. It wasn't on maps. It didn't appear in broadcasts. It existed in the black space between surveillance satellites, surrounded by 20 layers of defense grids and silence. Only the highest-ranking officers knew how to reach it. Fewer understood what really happened inside it. And none of them had ever imagined anyone could walk in uninvited. They had built it to be invisible. Impenetrable. Untouchable. That was their first mistake. I didn't need maps to find it. I had been there once. Years ago, in the final months of the Anders Rebellion, I was part of the Earth delegation granted restricted access for ceasefire coordination. I remembered the layout, the weakness in their quadrant shielding, and more importantly, I remembered how arrogant they were. They hadn't changed. They still believed no one would dare come near them. They were right about most people. But I wasn't most people. I had nothing left that could be taken from me. That made me the most dangerous kind of enemy, the kind who didn't care about surviving. We didn't storm the facility. We bled into it like smoke. My network had done its job. Over weeks, I'd rerouted a dozen of their encrypted supply chains to deliver gear that had been tampered with. Power cells rigged to short under specific frequencies. Comms units seeded with ghost code. Security terminals loaded with triggers. Everything waiting. All it needed was a single voice to activate. Mine. The day we moved, the entire Corps thought it was undergoing a system-wide diagnostic. Lights dimmed, security protocols reset, and doors opened on internal timers. No one ran. No one shouted. That would come later. When the internal grid came back online, it was no longer theirs. It answered to me. By then, we were already inside. I walked through the corridor wearing Kale's boot tag around my neck. The operators beside me said nothing. They had seen the footage too many times. They knew this wasn't a mission for medals. This was a message. We reached the central command hall without firing a single shot. The personnel inside froze when they saw me. One of them recognized my face from the old war footage. Another whispered my name like it was a curse or a prayer. I didn't speak. I uploaded the file. Every screen in the Corps lit up. The Empire's private network, locked behind dozens of clearance levels, flickered with video. Faces. Children. Farmers. Colonists. Civilians. Not just from Vega 9. From 100 forgotten skirmishes across 3 decades of Imperial expansion. Every time they had called it protocol. Every time they had filed it as a necessary action. I had the records. I had the names. And now, so did every officer in the room. Then Kale's face came up. Just a boy in 2 big boots, chasing a dog near a campfire. His laughter echoed across the chamber. Then came the sound of the drone. Then the light. Then silence. No words. No explanations. Just that unbearable stillness. I looked around the room. Most couldn't meet my eyes. One of them, a younger officer with trembling hands, asked why I had done this. I said nothing. I walked to the broadcasting station and keyed the override sequence. Across the galaxy, the Empire's signal changed. Every screen, every terminal, every encrypted display flickered with static and then went black. Then my voice came through. Not through shouting, not through threat. Just a calm, measured tone. My name is General Marilaskan. You killed my son. I showed Kale's footage again. I listed the coordinates of Vega 9. I listed the date and time. I read the strike order. I named the man who signed it. Grand Strategos Varn Deluxe, High Executor of Eastern Command. He had filed it under emergency clearance, bypassing confirmation. He had claimed it was a suspected rebel cluster. No recon. No scans. Just elimination. Then I turned the feed on Deluxe himself. He was seated 2 floors above me in a panic room. He had been watching the broadcast the entire time. I had rerouted the camera feed to show his expression. Frozen. Humiliated. Trapped. The man who signed away a colony now watched a galaxy see his face. I gave them a final message. I am not your enemy. I am your mirror. You just never looked close enough. Then I cut the transmission. The chaos that followed was expected. Officers fled. Others surrendered. Some even defected on the spot. Tavares didn't fall with explosions. It fell with silence and shame. We left the facility intact. That was part of the punishment. Let them explain to their people why they were unarmed, exposed, and beaten without a warship fired. Let them face their own citizens. Let them feel what every parent in Vega 9 had felt when the sky turned against them. Deluxe was taken alive. I made sure of it. Earth requested him for war crimes. I denied the request. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. Deluxe would not die a martyr. He would live to see the Empire fracture. He would wake up every day knowing that a single human general dismantled his legacy and left his name carved into disgrace. He would rot, not in a grave, but in history. I returned to Earth not in a dropship, not in glory, but in a civilian transport. I sat alone, carrying a single bag. No uniform. No medals. Just a small tag around my neck and a weight that would never leave. The president offered to reinstate me. They wanted to make me head of defense. I declined. I had done what I came to do. I didn't want power. I wanted them to remember. I built a home in the woods far from the cities. I buried Kale's boot in the ground and planted a tree over it. No grave marker. No ceremony. Just life growing from what was taken. Sometimes I hear laughter on the wind. Sometimes I hear nothing at all. But I don't run anymore. I don't sleep with one eye open. The war didn't end. But the message was clear. We are not weak because we cry. We are strong because we do. You killed a child thinking it would break us. You created a ghost and gave her an army. And now, even in peace, they still speak my name with fear. Not because of what I destroyed, but because of what I remembered.